Hi guys, it has been a while. It has been a while since I streamed on the channel. So it's been a while. I think had a lot of things in my personal life. So I think this week we're not gonna have a team selection video, but we're gonna have the deadline stream. All right. So this is my team on the screen right now. To be honest, haven't really tinkered around with it a lot because I was waiting for the news. A lot of the press conferences that came out today are gonna change the transfer plans that we have. Right, so first off, I think the most important one is that Mitrovic is probably gonna miss one game week. Right, so Mitrovic is probably going to be out for this game week. But there's also a chance that he can start, right? In the press conference, Fabio Silva actually did allude to the fact that he could start, but if he doesn't, he would be back for Bournemouth, right? So that's Mitrovic. I think the main question there about Mitrovic is not really whether we sell him or not. I think he's probably a keep, right? But it's whether you start him or not. And I think that actually boils down to who you have on your bench. Right. Then for other news, Isak, of course, out. He's probably gonna be out for a while, so I'm probably gonna have to sell Isak. And then Martinelli, he did pick up a knock yesterday, but I think he's not too much of a doubt at this moment. So Martinelli is fine. Bailey also nursing a little bit of a knock. So apart from that, I think players returning from injury, Matty Cash, also Anderson, right? Joachim Anderson from Crystal Palace also back in contention. So these are probably the notable players that are returning or are currently injured, right? So I'll talk a little bit about my transfer plans. So obviously, I have 1.9 in the bank. So it's pretty straightforward for me, right? Isak definitely has to leave, right? And I only have one free transfer. So Zaha is the obvious replacement for me for Bailey, right? And Isak has to go, so he's gonna make funds for that. So I probably will have to take a -4 if I wanna bring Zaha in. So if I do this, right, then minus 0.7, so I would have to downgrade Isak. So I think the main question for me on today's stream is that I will have to decide, right, among all the forward options, the cheap forward options. I think some of you may be in this situation as well, right? Among the cheap forward options, who should we go for, right? Let me just sort by forwards, right? So there's not a lot of forwards we can actually go for, right? There's only really three that I am considering, right? Edouard, Daka, and Costa, right? These three. I don't even talk about Solanke. I don't think I'll go there. His numbers are just not good, and Bournemouth are just they're not doing great, right? And their style of play has kind of changed. I feel like they've become a lot more defensive, so I don't really like that as well. Yeah, so I think at this point in time, right, Bailey out for Zaha is probably what I want to do. So this Isak replacement is probably what we'll have to figure out on this stream. Right, let's say hi to some of you guys in the chat. Right, thanks for joining. Whitney, Random Junkie, Selwyn, Fazila, Greg as well. Hope you're doing okay. Yep, I'm great. I've just been a bit busy in my own personal life. Right, Bosco as well, member in the chat. And also Ruli, right? Where have you been? Yeah, I've been a bit MIA, I have to say. But that I think in the coming weeks I will start to post a little bit more content as well. Right. Thankfully I usually post wildcard videos, but I think these few game weeks aren't really good for wildcarding as well. So that kind of plays in nicely, right? But the next coming weeks I will be posting more videos. Yeah, so definitely really says tough luck this game week. Yeah, I mean, if you watched my team selection video last week, okay, alright, let's pull up the scores for last week. So I got 81 points last week. Ideally I would have wanted more, and ideally I could have, right, if I captain Haaland, of course. So I'm one of those who went for Salah captain, right? I took De Bruyne out, captain, brought Salah in and captained him, right? So if I had not done the move, I think I probably won't be in this spot, right? I will be firstly I have a better rank, right? I'm not complaining. I think at this point in time we're packed so tightly, right? So I'm not complaining about the rank at this point in time, but I think that if I hadn't made that move, right, I wouldn't be in this position that I'm currently in, right? Which is that I will have to take a -4 to bring Zaha in for Bailey, right? If I didn't do that, if I just captained Haaland last week, I mean, a lot of hindsight, right? But I felt like there was a lot of upside to the move last week as well, right? Bringing Salah in, right? Thinking about the decision process as well, there were a couple of reasons why I did it, right? So first of all, De Bruyne starting in the Champions League against Copenhagen actually kind of foiled my plans because I thought that, I mean, predicting Pep Roulette isn't easy, right? But I did feel like Kevin De Bruyne would play against Copenhagen, and if that happens, then he probably would be rested against Southampton, right? But obviously, he didn't play against Copenhagen, so he's probably going to start against Southampton. So there's another worry as well. It's probably gonna, I mean, I foresee a lot of goals there, right? Man City and Southampton, so I probably will have to hope that Salah can outscore De Bruyne over the next coming game weeks, but I honestly doubt. So I think it will probably be a case of how many points I would suffer while holding Salah up till game week 12 when that's when we expect him to return, right? That's when a lot of people are gonna do KDB to Salah, right? If you still want Salah, I think at this point in time we also have to see the next coming game weeks because Liverpool's formation is changing, right? 4-2-3-1 now at this point. So Salah's role is gonna change. Trent's role is going to change as well, so we will have to keep a lookout for that, right? So that's pretty much last week, right? Madison Hall, I'm pretty happy with that. Started Ward over Pope, right? And I received a couple of messages on why before the game week as to why I started Ward, and benched Pope. So it's actually based on the clean sheet odds. I kind of narrowed down my keeper decisions to just leaving it to the percentages. So I will show you guys later on. But I think if I leave the keeper decision to that, I feel like it's a little bit more independent of like what I feel. Right, so I'll show you guys the odds for game week 10 for clean sheets, and then maybe you can make your own decisions on who you want to start or who you want to bench. I think it's pretty obvious this week. If you have Pope or if you have Guaita, you're probably going to start them ahead of Ward, right? So, but it's still good to know the odds. So we'll take a look at it later. Can you afford Tony or Wilson? I can't. Yeah, I mean I toyed around a lot with possibly not going for Zaha, but I think just in terms of a long-term move, right, I really feel like bringing Zaha in would pay off, right, as opposed to, so what I'm talking about is if I take Bailey out and bring Zaha in, right, this is more of a long-term move than if I actually keep Bailey, right, and then I just do Isak to maybe someone that's popular right now is either Wilson or maybe Skamaka, right? So let's say I just do a straight swap to Wilson, right? I don't think I can keep him for that long because I will need funds, right? I do want to bring some other players in the coming game weeks. I will want players like Diaz, right? Foden from game week 13 onwards is also something I need to consider, right? So if I downgrade this third forward spot, then I guess I will have more funds, right? So what I'm thinking about is actually if I do, let's say Daka, right? At this point, I'm not really leaning towards any of them at this point in time. I think it's still up for debate, right? But let's say I do Zaha and Daka, right? I have 0.5 in the bank. Right, moving forward later on in the game weeks, is very possible that I can bring other players up, right? I did some calculations just now, tinkered around a little bit, right? And yeah, I think having that extra money just allows me to do a little bit more, right? So I'm probably going to have to choose whether I want to go for Zaha or take this third forward as Tony or Wilson, right? But what I'm leaning towards is obviously Zaha. I think his fixtures are just, yeah, his fixtures are a little bit irresistible, I have to say. But for those of you who have midfields like, Bowen, Madison, Foden, I think all these midfields are pretty much stacked, right? You probably have Martinelli as well. I wouldn't take him out. So I feel like a lot of people would be in situations where your midfield is already very stacked. So it's quite tough to find a route to Zaha, especially since there's a blank in game week 12. Right, it's tough for you to find the funds because if you don't downgrade your third forward, you can't have the funds, right? But these cheap forwards are the ones with fixtures in game week 12, right? So yeah, I mean we have to make some compromises. Need to get rid of Fofana. Guehi, yeah, Guehi is definitely the one I would go for. Right, Bosco says Tony captain last week here. Yeah, a lot of people captain. Okay, to be fair, right, 46% of the entire FPL manager population did not captain Haaland. Right, so that is a little bit less than half. Right, but obviously, that still takes a toll on our rank. So not ideal, but there's a lot of talk also about whether it's season ending. So my thoughts on whether it's season ending is basically there's a lot of chance to make up rank, right? The ranks are packed very tightly now, and on top of that, there were a couple of players last season, right? Last season I captained Salah in game week 9, right? A lot of people went for Havertz. And at the end, I mean, this is subject to a lot of the events that happen from here on out, right? But a lot of people still ended off with really good ranks, even though in game week 9 they captained Havertz. So I think there's the talk about whether it's season ending. I don't think it's there's plenty of time for us to make up some points. Who to bring in for Bailey? 2 mil in the bank. I mean, at this point in time, the best mids to go for, right? If you don't have Madison, right, Foden, I wouldn't go for Bowen, I'd say, right? In game week 12, he has Liverpool. If I'm buying a player, right, probably looking for Madison, Zaha, Trossard possibly. Yeah, if you're looking for cheaper. Marcus says, should he take a hit for Zaha this week? That seems like what I'm doing, right? The problem is there's a stat that I read recently on Twitter that says Zaha hasn't scored in. Okay, the thing is, all these tweets have to be taken in isolation, right? It doesn't mean that it's gonna happen again, right? But at this point in time, right, the tweet that I read just said that Zaha hasn't scored against Leeds, right, in 10 games. And Crystal Palace just hasn't had a good record against Leeds, right? But at this point, I mean, it's looking like okay, it's a good time to pull up the odds actually. Right, let's pull up the odds. So on the screen is the Draft Town odds for the games for game week 10 and onwards, right? So let's take a look at game week 10, right? 88% for Man City to win Southampton. I think pretty much, that's obvious, right? Followed by Chelsea, 71%, right? And then West Ham is actually right up there, right? West Ham is 58% to win Fulham, right, at home. And then Newcastle, 56% to win Brentford. Now, Crystal Palace is actually really, really high up, right? Crystal Palace is 49% to win Leeds. So, okay, as opposed to Leeds, who's 28% to win Crystal Palace, I think them playing at home also makes a difference, right? But something to know about Crystal Palace is that they have done, I would say, pretty well this season, considering that the start of this season they played a lot of tough teams. So I would say that independent of the tweet that I just mentioned, right, I still feel like Crystal Palace are the favourites here, and Zaha is actually pretty high on predicted points. We'll take a look later, but he's pretty high on the predicted points for game week 10. So is he worth a hit? I mean, I'm doing it, so I would say yes, but it actually depends on your team makeup, right? I would only take a hit if you have clear, moves to make. If you're talking about players like Bowen, Madison, and Zaha, who you have currently in place Bowen, Madison, Foden, who you have in place now for, um, if who you have in place now for Zaha, then it's not a rush, right? I don't think that it's essential, right? You could delay it one game week. I think if you have other players that could do well in this game week as well, right? I don't think it's a must. Right, so for the rest of the teams, Leicester also pretty high up. Manchester United as well, but I'm not too attracted by their assets. I think the fixtures put me off a little bit, right? And then there's Leicester, 48%. Aston Villa, 45% to win Nottingham Forest. But Bailey is injured, so I will have to take him out. Right, Watkins is getting chances, but he's just not finishing. So I don't really think Watkins is too much of a consideration at this point in time. Right, probably feels like a little bit more of just a one game week kind of player. Arsenal 40% to win Liverpool. Right, Arsenal is actually higher on the winning odds, right? With Liverpool are only 38% to win Arsenal. So Arsenal are the slight favourites here, right? But obviously Liverpool is Liverpool. So this season they haven't been playing well, obviously, but if they turn it up, right, we know the quality that they have. So I mean, it feels like a question of when they will come back. So it's tough, right? Arsenal and Liverpool, a tough game to call, I'd say. Yep. So that's pretty much it. So if you're talking about Crystal Palace, I feel like they are still the favourites. I don't think I don't think it'll be 0-0, right? I see maybe 2-0, 3-0 kind of game. Right. Let's take a look at some of the questions. You need to downgrade Salah. That's the thing, you see. I don't think after bringing him in, I wouldn't want to take him out already. I think there's something else that I considered is exactly as you mentioned, right? Taking Salah out, downgrading him to maybe an 8 mil mid, and then I can have the funds there after to maybe upgrade Andreas Pereira to another 8 mil mid, say, right? But the thing is, if I do that, come game week 12, come game week 13, I'm just going to find it hard to bring Salah back in again, right? So I probably will have to just tide through these 2 game weeks. So that's how it stands at the moment. I don't think I will downgrade Salah, right? Obviously, I'm not going to swap back to Kevin De Bruyne again. I don't think we can play around with transfers like that. It's such a waste of transfers, I feel, if I do that. Who to swap Kane with? If you have Kane this game week, I think he's a stronghold. Callum Wilson, Watkins, or Tony? Easy. Wilson. Joseph Green says, good evening, love the content. Thanks a lot, Joseph. Already done Martinelli to Zaha, but would you rather switch Mitrovic for Watkins or Wilson or Luka Dean to Gehi? I'd hold Mitrovic, right? And I think the Martinelli to Zaha move is fine as well. Right, so what I prefer is Luka Dean to Gehi. I think that's the most obvious one at this point in time. Yeah, I think that move stands out the most. Right, Rihan says, what to do with Isak? Couple of things I would do, and that depends on your team. Right, if you already have the mids that we want, right, like Zaha, Madison, maybe even Trossard if you want, right? If you have all these players, right, I think Isak can be downgraded to make funds for some other areas, right? But if you don't need the funds, I think you can look for replacements around that area. Then those would probably be Wilson, right? I think Wilson is predicted to do pretty well, right, based on the odds. We'll see later as well, right? Wilson is one of the players on my watch list, right? If I can afford him, obviously I would want to go there. But as I mentioned in my team just now, I don't think I can go for Wilson. So if I could, I would, right? Wilson, I don't think I go for Watkins as mentioned. So because he's too much of a short-term pick. So probably either Wilson around that bracket or even Jesus, right? If you, but the problem is Jesus blanks in game week 12. So it really depends. It depends on your team, right? If you need the funds, then you go for a downgrade. If you don't need the funds, then you go for a player around the price bracket. So I'll do a little short segment later on the players that I am considering to downgrade ESUP to. Hopefully that one helps you. Right, Marcus says Ward starting goalkeeper, Zaha, Mitrovic, or Pope, Bailey, Solanke. Seems like you're on a wild card. Definitely not the latter, I think. I think Ward, Zaha, Mitrovic, that's probably my preferred one. What do you think about Pope and Martinelli to Guaita and Zaha? 2 free transfers, gets me out of double Newcastle defense. 11 for 12, and I think Martinelli is going to drop in price soon. Alright, so I'm not opposed to this move, I think. I'm not opposed to it. But the thing is, right, you will probably want, the first thing is that there's value tied up in Martinelli. That's the first thing. Right? And the second thing is, we probably will want Martinelli back in game week 13, game week 14. Great fixtures for Arsenal, right? And we know Martinelli's numbers are absolutely brilliant, right? He's among the midfielders, right? He's been really, really amazing, especially at his price point. So that's one of the reasons why I would try to keep Martinelli, but as this coming game week, right, he has Liverpool. Game week 12, he has a blank. So that's why I don't think it's a question of can you get him back. I feel if you can get him back, right, then I would do it. Guaita as the 4.5 keeper as well. I think if you have Gehi, you would have to consider that you're gonna double up on Crystal Palace defense in game week 12 as well when there's a blank. So what do you want to do there? Right, so Fatality says I'm a wild card. Pope, Trippier, Cancelo, James, Madison, Zaha, Foden, Bowen, Alba, Alan Watkins, Pope, Kepa, or Pickford and Watkins to Wilson maybe. I think Kepa is an interesting pick, right? There's talk about whether Potter is now going to have Kepa as the first choice keeper. But if you're talking about the problem is there's some risks there, right? But of course we have Ward on the bench, right? But Pickford, if you ask me to choose Pope to Kepa or Pickford, I would actually say tough, but I'd say Pickford actually, right? Just a little bit more risk I feel with Kepa, right? And Watkins to Wilson. If you have Watkins, I keep Watkins. But if you're on a wild card, definitely I would prefer Wilson, especially for long term, right? So I take Watkins out, put Wilson in. I wouldn't want to go double Newcastle defense as well, so I'd say Pickford is my preferred one, right? But Guaita is a consideration as well, right? If you have funds, I think Guaita is the better pick. All right, let's move on to the next part. So this was how I made my decision last week on whether to whether to start Ward or to start Pope. Right, so basically last week Newcastle was lower than Leicester in terms of clean sheet odds, so that's why I started Ward. So this coming game week, right, Newcastle are actually 36%, right, 36% to get a clean sheet, right, behind Chelsea and behind Man City. So for these reasons, I think it's safe to just start Pope and also have Trippier in your starting 11. So it's probably what I'm going to do. Right, 36% I think is pretty alright. Man City, of course, 51%. Southampton, obviously not predicted to do very well. Right, and then Chelsea, 51% against Wolves. So Chelsea and Man City, I think we're looking at Cancelo and Reece James to really haul in these games. So something interesting as well. I have Zuma, right, I'm going to start Zuma as well, right? So 36%, I'm pretty happy with this. And one of the reasons why I did bring in Zuma at the start is also because when I wildcarded in game week 8 is also because checking the clean sheet odds from when I would need him, right, which is essentially from game week 9 all the way I started him, right? I started him game week 9 all the way up till game week 13. West Ham are actually pretty high up the clean sheet odds. So that's one of the reasons why I went for Zuma. So 36% here, I think we're looking at pretty good odds here. Right, Manchester United, 34%. I don't think a lot of us have their players. Right, and then Aston Villa is pretty high as well, right, because Nottingham Forest isn't that great. So if you have Mings, probably start Mings. Right, I would start Mings ahead of Gehi, right, who's similar percentages, but as I mentioned, I think I prefer Aston Villa's defense. Right, Leicester 31% as well. So essentially, we're looking at mainly the teams that are going to get clean sheets, right? Chelsea, Man City, Newcastle, West Ham, Aston Villa, and Crystal Palace, probably a bit tougher to call there, right? But that's what the odds are telling us at this point in time. Is Gross still worth keeping? I wouldn't actually. I think he would free up funds for other areas. I think Gross to Zaha is a possible move, right? Alif says just got here, right? Thanks for joining the stream. Right, what are we doing with Mitrovic? Keep. I would say keep. Worth keeping Salah and Trent. If you have Salah and Trent, Salah is a keep for me, right? I'd say I have Salah right now. I'm not opposed to removing him, but if you have both, I'd actually be tempted to take Trent out first before I actually do anything to Salah, right? So maybe Trent to I'm not sure if you wildcarded, right? But if you don't have the standard Cancelo and James, you can go there. Downgrade Trent to Gehi is also a possibility. Right, Bosco says first week that I think captaincy rubric is not needed. Just go for Haaland captain. Yeah, 100%. That's why I haven't done the captaincy rubrics for this week. I mean, I was destroyed by the captaincy last week, so I think we're just gonna go with Haaland and the 1 week that I decide not to go with Haaland, he gets a 23-point haul. The last time I went against the rubrics as well, right, he also got a hat-trick. So I missed 2 hat-tricks from Haaland. I think we're just going to keep it on him. Right, Alif says Bailey's injured. Yeah, he's nursing a little bit of a knock. I think not completely out, right, but I would take him out of my team because I want Zaha. Right, so I think decent time to switch back to the team right now. Yeah, so yeah, once again, I think I'm faced with a decision, right? So Dhaka, alright, let's revert to my original team. Right, so this is the situation I'm faced with right now. I probably will take Bailey and Isak both out. So Zaha in for Bailey and Isak out for a forward that is lower than 6.2 mil. Right, so I think we'll just take a look at the Fantasy Football Hub stats right now, because this is pretty much how I also make my decisions on whether I want to go for on which forward I want to go for. So there's only a couple that I think are worth considering, right? So let's do a little bit of comparisons. So players, we're looking at the game week 1 to game week 9 range. So the first one I would say is Dhaka. I think the problem with him is that he's a minutes risk. So I'm not too fond of him, right? But we'll have him in the comparison, right? There's also Edouard. Problem is also a rotation risk, right? There's also Costa, right? So I know a lot of people are saying Solanke, so we'll put him in here as well. Hold on. Can't get Costa. Alright. So lastly, Solanke, right? For those who really want Solanke in here as well. Right, so let's take a look. Dhaka, Solanke, Edouard. and Costa, right? Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. Right, so yeah, essentially this is what I'm looking at, right? If I sort by expected goal involvement, which is usually what I use as a metric, right, we will have to consider that Costa has only one game played, right, 32 minutes, and the problem with the 32-minute game is that his data is a little bit skewed, so we will have to kind of take it with a pinch of salt. But that being said, I was very impressed with the way he played in his 32-minute cameo, right? 32 minutes played. I think he did really well, right? He expected goals of 0.84 in just that one game. So I think I was impressed with him. He kind of made the Wolves attack click as well. So that is he's probably one of the players that out of these four that I'm actually leaning towards, right? So Daka coming up next with 0.8 expected goal involvement, right? Edouard 0.5, Solanke 0.3. So the problem with Solanke is that his minutes are just so bad, right? I can't see myself going for Solanke, right? Even with his fixtures, and plus Bournemouth are playing kind of a different game right now. So I don't think I would go for Solanke, right? Costa at 0.9 expected goal involvement. As mentioned, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. So if we are talking about over the course of the first few game weeks, right, who has the best stats, right? If we kind of adjust Costa's stats, right, Daka actually comes out best, right, out of these four options. And also, problem is that Edouard is a minutes risk, right? So is Daka, right? Solanke is nailed, but his stats aren't good, right? Costa, we don't know whether he starts or not. I think there is so much there's so much confusion in the Wolves camp right now because they just changed manager, so a lot of things could happen, right? But as of now, the reason why I'm leaning towards Costa is because in game week 11 and game week 13, right, which is when I would actually need them, of course game week 12 as well because there's a blank, right, Wolves are actually second on the fixture ticker from game week 11 to game week 13, which is when I would need him. So you couple that with new manager bounce, I think Costa could be a decent pick, right? Decent pick. So I've seen some of you guys saying go for Martial. Alright, so if we're not looking at the lower bracket, right, there are a couple of options, right? Let's bring up the players who are a little bit more pricey. I think someone that I'm actually really interested in, right, but the problem is I can't get to him, right? It's actually Skamaka, if I can spell his name. Right, hold on. Yeah, so Skamaka. Antonio, I wouldn't go there. Right, then some of you guys want Watkins as well, right? Let's see his stats. Right, there's Wilson as well. Yeah, put him in. Right, Welbeck, also someone else to consider. Watkins here. Right, who else are we missing? Martial. Right, are we missing anyone else? Anyone else that you guys want to go for? Mopé. I don't think Mopé, but we'll have him in. Tony, let's put Tony in as well. Right. Yeah, so sorted by expected goal involvement again, right? Martial, he's played so little, right, but he's got so many returns. So I think not a surprise to see him all the way up top here, 2.1. Expected, once again, a little bit skewed, right? But if you're talking about replacements within this bracket, the reason why I wouldn't consider Martial is I don't think he has the best fixtures, right? His numbers are decent, but I don't think he has the best fixtures. Wilson is someone I would really consider, right? Tony, not so much. Welbeck is interesting, right? But I'm just not too keen on how much returns we would get from him, right? Mopé as well, right? I think for Everton, if you're looking at Mopé, actually game week 13 onwards, he could be someone that we consider for Mitrovic out for Mope. That's one of the possibilities, right? Watkins, I wouldn't go there, but he has Nottingham Forest, right? So Skamaka is actually really the one that I would consider, right? If you're going for a punt, right? If you don't have enough money, right, Skamaka, right? But if you're going for a long term, I think Wilson stands out to me out of everyone here. Should I buy Trossard? I think the problem with Trossard is his fixtures aren't that good now, but game week 12 he has a really good fixture against Forest, and then thereafter it gets good as well. So for this period, I'm not too keen, right, on Trossard, but if you guys are chasing rank, kind of trying to make up some points, he could be somewhere you want to go for, but I personally wouldn't, right? I'd wait and see it as well, right? Because there's only one game, right? Brighton were already playing quite well, right? So I think the base players are good for Brighton, right? So if they can keep it up, I think he starts to become a little bit more of an option. Right, so the last thing I want to talk about here is the predicted points. So, I mean, it's no surprise. Haaland is predicted to score 10.6 points. I think if we are captaining anyone else, right, we do have to check ourselves. Haaland is the clear captaincy, right? Even if he doesn't start. So there's some talk about him possibly being benched, right? Because he started so many games. But the problem is, I don't think that is likely because he came off at 45 minutes against Copenhagen. So it's pretty likely he'll start, right? So quite clear he's going to be the captaincy option 10.6, right? But vice captaincy, just in case Pep wants to be a little bit safe with Haaland, right? Then check your vice captaincy as well. The other options here, I think Cancelo makes a decent vice captain, right? But De Bruyne 8.8, right? Foden 7.3, and Cancelo 6.4. All of them pretty high up, right? James is here as well. I think not a surprise because Chelsea are pretty high up the clean sheet odds. So James at 5.9 as well, right? And then we have Zaha, right? See, he's so high up the predicted points. I think if you talk about let's pull up game week 10 to, let's say game week 10 to 13. 10 to 16, right? Of course, Salah is up there, right? But I think Zaha is pretty high as well, yeah. 35.9 points from game week. We're looking at game week 10 to 16, right? Salah, Haaland, Son and Kane, Trent, De Bruyne, Diaz, and then right after that is Zaha. So it's pretty much a set and forget, I feel. I would take a hit to bring Zaha in this week, but obviously, as I mentioned, if you have other players in your midfield that are, worthy of a place instead of Zaha, then I don't see the rush, right? You can delay it. I think one game week is all right. Right. Any other player? Any player other than City or Arsenal assets matters? Zaha. Will you take a -4 to get in your team? I don't think anyone else is actually worthy of a -4 other than Maddison and Zaha. I don't think I would take a -4 to bring Bowen in. I don't think I would take a -4 to, I'm not sure who else. Wilson, I wouldn't take a -4. Yeah, I think pretty much just Zaha is the only one I would actually take a -4 for. Pope plus Justin or Ward plus Trippier? I would say Ward and Trippier actually. Yeah, also depends who's your second keeper, but I go for Ward and Trippier. Just because of Trippier set pieces and bonus points potential. Really, really like that. Right, so as I mentioned, right, I will have to decide who is going to fill this Isak spot. So I think at this point in time, it's looking like Diego Costa, right, for reasons mentioned just now. I think I go for Costa because I only need him for 11, 12, and 13. Forest at home, Palace away, Leicester at home. So I think it's definitely a risk, but I think if we're talking about a third forward option, that is where we can take risks, I feel. Right? It seems like I'm justifying Diego Costa right now, but I feel like this position is where we can take risks. So I don't feel like I'm losing out too much if I go for Solanke, right? Alif says he's gone for Solanke. Right, this third forward spot here is probably where we can take the most risks. So I'm probably going to go for Diego Costa, right? Just because Daka is a minute's risk, Edouard also a minute's risk, Mateta also a minute's risk, right? So Solanke, I just don't want to go for him. His numbers are not great. Bournemouth not looking good, right? I'm sure he'll take along, right? But in the span of the 3 game weeks that I need this third forward spot, right? Costa actually has decent fixtures, and I think I was impressed by him. I think he's gonna come into the squad, possibly new manager bounce as well. So we'll see, right? Maybe famous last words, and then Costa gets injured or something, and the gamble doesn't pay off. Right, so as of now, it's probably gonna look like this. Right? I probably will start Pope, right? James. I could actually go for a 5 at the back actually, right? And then I'll easier to visualize it from whom I'm benching. I'll probably bench Ward. I'll probably bench Mitrovic, Andreas, and Costa. Right, so start everyone else. Right, but the problem I think that the decision that I think I will have to make after at this point, right, if I go with these transfers is, do I start Mitrovic ahead of Gehi or not? And the problem is, if he comes on for a 20-minute or 30-minute cameo, because let's say he happens to be fit, right? If he comes in for a 20-30-minute cameo, I'm not really gonna fancy my chances against West Ham, right? So I may actually bench Mitrovic, but we'll take a look. We'll see if I actually choose to start Mitrovic ahead of Gehi, right? But for now, Mitrovic, Andreas, Costa, and Ward on the bench, and I'm probably gonna start everyone else. Obviously, if I bring Costa in, right? So we'll see. Right. So that's pretty much what I have for today. Bosco says, actually, we need to keep an eye out for the yellow card. Yes, definitely, right? Jesus has 4 yellow cards, right? So that's kind of the reasons why I'm still keeping Martinelli, because I actually want Jesus, right? Ideally, I would want Jesus, but if I bring him in game week 11, let's say I take Martinelli out this week, I go for Zaha in that spot, I don't take a hit, right? And then next week, maybe I do Isak, because I won't have to take a hit. I still have Isak. I can do Isak to Jesus. But if I do that, then if he gets a yellow card, one more yellow card, he's suspended for game week 13, right? And then it's not so attractive anymore, right? I lose him for one of the key games that I expect Arsenal to return. So that's one of the reasons I've chosen to stick with Martinelli. I think Maddison in game week 13, I can actually do Maddison to Saka. Right? I'm not opposed to that. I can do Maddison to Luis Diaz as well. Right? So I'm not opposed to all these moves. Right? Moving forward, I probably won't think too far, right? But these are the moves I can actually go for. Should I start Mitro? Or he may come in for 15-minute cameo. Start Gehi, Neko, Andreas. Who will you start out of those 4? So that's exactly the spot I mentioned, right? The problem is I'm pretty sure that he could. Okay, so there's a couple of possibilities. Right? The first thing is he starts. Right? And if he starts and he's on our bench, that's probably gonna be a bummer. Right? So that's worst case scenario. Right? Middle ground is that he comes on for 20-30 minutes. Right? In that case, that's not ideal as well. Right? So, and the problem is, I think we're talking about the likelihood of Mitrovic scoring against West Ham. Right, and as we saw just now, the odds aren't in favor of Mitrovic, but the thing is, he's not 100%. I would say he's not 100%, right? But what I'm leaning towards is actually just starting Gehi ahead of Mitrovic. So at this point in time, that's what I've been leaning towards. He's on penalties. I think Alif is talking about Solanke, right? Yeah, Solanke is on penalties. So that's one of the things, right? Even though his numbers aren't great, Solanke is nailed and on penalties, right? But I'm just really not confident of Bournemouth at this point in time, right? Even though they have good fixtures. So it's looking like I'm probably going to choose either Dhaka. If we get some early team news, maybe Dhaka or Diego Costa, either one, right? So that's pretty much what I'm gonna do. Right, is it worth to downgrade Pope toward two Leicester's keepers combo so as to allow funds to upgrade Bailey to Zaha for 2 free transfers? That's actually one of the possibilities, but the problem I see with that is, let's say Leicester, they did keep the clean sheet, right? But let's say they don't, that is the only one that they keep, right? You're gonna be stuck for super long, right? As opposed to having the choices between maybe even just Iverson or Ward plus maybe Gaeta, right? Or Raya, right? You have those options there, right? But if you just go for 2 Leicester keepers, you're probably not gonna go for another keeper swap because you're not gonna waste your transfers on keepers. So in that case, yeah, I mean, I know there are people out there doing that, but I think it's a little bit risky, right? And I think the point difference with giving Pope up, right, and then doing Bailey to Zaha, I mean, eventually it could work out to be the same. So I'll probably just keep Pope, find some other ways to get money for Zaha. That's probably what I would do. Especially since this game week, as I mentioned just now, right, Newcastle pretty high up the clean sheet odds as well. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you guys in the game week 11 content. Have a bit of content planned for game week 11, but it's still a bit busy this period. So game week 12 onwards, I think the content will start to pick up. Right, I'll do a game week 12 wildcard draft as well, but for game week 11, I think pretty much just some transfer plans, team selection. So that's pretty much that. Thoughts on Trossard, Welbeck, or just wait for next week? Yeah, I wouldn't go there. I wait. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're still here, right, please help me out and give this stream a like and also subscribe. And I'll see you guys in another video very soon. Bye bye.